Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm the Grace Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Thursday, July 25th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card we are starting our day off with today is, I'm not surprised to see it. We've got here our 5 of Swords and it's upright. We're in this pre-retrograde period. I'm telling you right now, I like this because the best way I can describe it is like, imagine that a lot of that emotionality that we experience, particularly at the end of that Capricorn full moon, was like a wave, and this is like the pulling back of the wave, if you will. So it's like seeing all of the things that are left in the sand, as it were, after something comes forward in such a way. So for masculine and feminine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, there's a lot of unpacking that's occurring here. But what's important and valuable are recognizing looking back on something. Like the reason the retrograde periods are so helpful and important, it's not the fact that the universe is bringing the past forward again, either tangibly or metaphysically, to make you feel terrible. It's coming through in a way to help you recognize how far you have come and your own perception on something, looking at the past, but with the optics and the presence of the present. That allows for that redefining, if you will. It allows for the ability to heal. It allows the ability to see things in a different context. So we see even now that's having its impact. And there's a lot, I gotta say, I'm seeing a lot of sensitivity that is coming through right now with this retrograde, because the sensitivity is almost experiencing circumstances and situations from the past, but being almost unflinching about it, allowing oneself to be able to experience something, but in a way that is non-reactive, right? It creates that ability to observe and to contemplate. It's a very contemplative energy, but it can feel very dense depending on how you receive it. Masculine and feminine energy, deep within the divine union frequency, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Again, a lot of that work that we're seeing that the masculine is navigating, potentially even now, if these are experiences from the past that are arising back towards you, potentially even looking towards the self in the process, because we saw that for a lot of the masculine energy right now, experiencing situations and circumstances that may have had more of a volatility space for you, more of a reactivity space in the past. What happens when you're working with counterpart energy? We were even identifying and describing that the ability to perceive something from the perspective of the counterpart, that is that moment of integration of path work that occurs that doesn't require you to effectively change for the sake or the benefit of the counterpart, but simply being able to be in a space or place where you recognize and you see the lessons that the counterpart is navigating, but also being able to integrate those same lessons into your own. That is a lot of the beauty that we see is occurring right now deep within the divine union. For masculine, a lot of that work right now may have to do with recognizing and identifying spaces or places of healing the inner child, because we saw that some of that sensitivity, that inner child that comes up, that exhaustion point of the Cancer season, the emotional self that almost rises up like a child. For a lot of the masculine energy, having that feeling even coming towards you now in that state of navigating interpersonal relationships or circumstances that you may have previously observed from a point of provocation, something that you felt like you had to defend yourself against, something that you felt like you had to stand up against. If this is masculine energy that's now kind of perceiving that from the perspective of a feminine, right? Taking and integrating some of those lessons. Well, what is a lot of the path work that we saw that was coming through? What was like the cliff notes of the energetic lesson that were occurring over the last few days for masculine? I feel this need to say this. If someone comes towards you in a way that they themselves are seeing you or perceiving you or treating you like a child, the thing that you don't want to do in that moment is oblige them the courtesy of acting like one. right? So we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy, it requires a little bit of that empathy and compassion, even in the modality of experiencing something that may previously have caused a sense or degree of volatility within you, right? Like there's that part of you, that like wants to rise up and be like, no, I'm not, you know, but also that modality of recognizing that that comes from the inner child, right? It comes from that inner child that wants to almost act like an adult, you know, like that is that modality where the masculine, in the minute of recognizing that, they see it within the other masculines around them. And then the ability of seeing that, it allows for that coursework or that pathwork of making a different choice in those moments. So we see even now, this may be creating a space where not only is there a bit of that work that you're doing, that you're recognizing and observing the changes within yourself, potentially even recognizing the changes that have occurred towards you being in divine union with feminine energy, but also having that point of observing past experiences where you may have had different, like you may have reacted in different ways. So a lot of contemplation that may be arriving on the cusp of this retrograde season. But that's because, again, it's the pressure and the and the emotionality of the movement that we see here. It's very sensitive, right? And when we navigate sensitivity, we have to do it with a level or degree of care, but also contemplation, right? Because that modality of looking and saying, is that pain that you're experiencing, was it something that was intended, or was it something that was inadvertent? Like a lot of that energy is more concentrating on that level or degree of discernment. While for feminine energy, a lot of this same path work, you know, the thing with the feminine energy right now is this isn't so much navigating the softness, trying to maintain some of that Cancerian energy still. This is that sense of confidence. This is trying to move into that space or place of energetic resolve. Because particularly if this was feminine energy, where in the past, you may have felt like that level or degree of being too overly apologetic, feeling like you were, you know, if you felt like there were so many obligations on you and you weren't able to like navigate through them, that it was some kind of limitation on one's own part. What is the energetic lesson that is being received right now via the connection towards counterpart masculine energy? That lesson, the cliff notes of that lesson effectively being, to a certain extent, that when you move in the pathwork of the self, you have to be prepared to energetically disappoint the energy around you. And that doesn't mean that you're effectively failing in some degree or some regard. It means that that's that modality of recognizing that often when we have to make choices for our own selves, and we can do that from a state or space of deep energetic compassion and love, that modality of observing whether someone understands and recognizes the why builds all of the confirmation in relationality to how one should proceed. So again, feminine potentially dealing with that oversensitivity, but the interesting thing is the oversensitivity that the feminine is navigating isn't potentially recognizing the oversensitivity within the self so much as it is observing it outside through others. So if this is feminine that is feeling like they're navigating those spaces of energy that feels like they're being overtly sensitive, and feminine doing that work and saying, I don't know if I've done something wrong here, but building that resolve in the self and saying, I know I haven't done something wrong here. The feminine energy, taking a page from the masculine's book, feeling that sense of not only the determination of the path work in terms of how their own resolve firming, but also being able to come into that point of contemplation and looking towards the past in spaces or places that they now like recognize that they would not be as apologetic, they would not be as energetically lenient. A lot of that work right now, it's like a lot of that, like I want to say, kind of like looking towards or looking back upon one's own energetic journey. A lot of contemplation energy for energy within the divine union right now. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, from masculine and feminine coming into divine union, I told you that energetic contemplation, if you will, the reason we're seeing that right now has to do with the best way I can describe what potentially occurred between those Capricorn full moons. For a lot of the energy with coming into divine union was that desire or that need, holding something valuable, holding something intrinsic, and saying we need to change this, but we don't want to change the quality and characteristic of it. I described it, I think that the description I was giving is like trying to like build or change a boat even as you're on the sea. So for a lot of the energy navigating forward in that way, a lot of this feeling coming out of this Capricorn full moon may be feeling like a sense of energetic accomplishment. Because if this is energy that feels like they have done that successfully, only now are the energies articulating the doubts, the fears, the anxieties that they may have felt along the way, right? It's like it's coming through something and not wanting to like increase the turbulence during it, and now feeling like that has successfully occurred. That's almost allowing for that easement point. It's allowing for that air, like again, much like we saw the energy deep within the divine union was doing over the last few days. Being able to let go of the burden, being able to feel like you can free up and unload like those anxieties towards the counterpart. Again, recognizing the difference between projecting them towards an energetic frequency, right? Not putting them upon someone, but articulating through them, right? We see even now that that's a lot of that energy that's moving much into that state or space of contemplation, because they're potentially talking about like all of that work. Or there's a lot of conversations about the past that are emerging based upon what you feel like you are succeeding or accomplishing in the present. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, a lot of this energy that we see in separation right now, this is more of that contemplation point. And why do we see some of that contemplation that is occurring? Because we saw even now, for a lot of the energy in separation, there is a feeling of something that may feel very similar to something that you may have experienced in the past. But what occurs in those modalities where we feel something that is very similar, so long as we don't come into that pathwork of assumption, so long as we don't let assumption override our intuition, right? That is the difference between assuming that the past is occurring again versus using that power of intuition that says maybe something is different here. Pay attention. There's something, maybe there's something that, there's something different between two things that look similar. Like a lot of the energy right now in separation is going through that contemplation state, because if this is energy wherein again, and it is having a different impact on masculine and feminine. For masculine, that ability of recognizing and identifying, like this could be a lot of the masculine energy right now in their own tangible experience, having to unpack some situations and circumstances from the past. That's either happening right now on an internal level, or it's happening on potentially a very practical one. So we see even now, like it's almost requiring that masculine energy to have to like effectively or energetically like not be able to move towards the feminine with as much determination as they would ideally desire at this point. But what are we seeing from a lot of the feminine energy in this modality right now? If this is feminine energy coming into that modality or that perspective of recognizing and identifying, again, feeling the difference between an energy that feels like, and I see even here, the difference between a minor inconvenience, always trying to change something in such a way, but always feeling that vitality of something that was never coming forward or in the way that you would aspire and desire. But now feeling the energy of someone who's like moving towards you with a lot of determination, with a lot of energetic conviction. A lot of the feminine energy right now in separation, they're coming into spaces of closure. They're coming into spaces of closure around past experiences through the observation of the past, as is the masculine. And for the feminine, it's seeing, like again, for the feminine, it's seeing masculine potentially coming towards them in separation with a lot of integrity or a lot of motivation. While for masculine, it's seeing potentially feminine in a modality of not taking something energetically personally, holding a space of empathy, understanding, and compassion. Second card in our 5-card spread for today is we have here our King of Wands in its reversal. Now, masculine and feminine energy right now, one of the things that we see when you're going to these periods of introspection, it can, and we even saw this. I keep seeing that there is like a refinement of communication that is occurring right now. And a lot of that refinement of communication that's occurring right now is a lot of that selectivity, because here we see that for a lot of the energy right now in separation, coming into that modality of recognizing and identifying what one wants to experience or express towards the counterpart. You know, for feminine right now, if these are situations and circumstances where you're potentially seeing or going towards a masculine, and you're feeling the weight of them like being under some kind of deep energetic inconvenience right now, and you're feeling the reality of that coming to bear to a certain extent, this is again the feminine energy that is not trying to, I want to say, over commodify upon the masculine at a time that they feel like the energy is already in a space of indisposal, right? So we see even now that for a lot of the energy of the feminine, there may be a lot of conversations that are happening right now in separation that have to do about sharing of past experiences, sharing about the perception of the present versus what has occurred in the past. While for masculine energy right now, what we effectively see is, again, there's a little bit of that energetic, like, and I see even now, like there's some of that masculine energy that's moving into that space or place in separation right now, of coming into that attunement of consideration. Because for a lot of the masculine energy right now, again, feeling and experiencing a feminine that is able to articulate upon the past, but isn't assuming that the masculine is in that modality, right? Like for a lot of the energy right now, a lot of work in terms of really trying to be understood by the counterpart energy, right? And we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy looking towards feminine, that ability of the feminine coming into that modality of being able to articulate upon experiences of the past without assuming that the past is happening now, right? That's almost like that moment that's, again, building that bridge. It's building that tie that binds between these energetic connections right now. While for feminine, seeing a masculine coming towards the feminine, again, not in that modality of trying to build a wall, but trying to do everything they can to show the genuineness, to show the authenticity of what they're potentially trying to offer the feminine, even in the midst of difficult circumstances. We see even now that a lot of the energies in this modality right now, you know, there's catharsis here. But there is, I have to say, there's a little less communication over the last few days. That would be, then would be ideal. And because what's difficult about this even here is that we're potentially seeing a circumstance where both energy is looking towards the other to speak more, because they don't want to come into that space or place of being an energetic burden. So, right, like this often can happen when you have energy that's very compassionate, is like they grow like a little bit less communicative in difficult moments because they don't want to overburden, or they don't want to put their own emotional prioritization point over what is effectively occurring. So even here we see there may be some confusion. I need to stress this is some of that pre-retrograde energy. There may be some confusion that is energetically occurring in those modalities. And I'll say it again. If you're feeling a sense of not understanding what's happening in the realm of communication, it's always better to ask a question, not coming into that realm of assumption, especially now because we're in that pre-retrograde season. Third card, while for the energy right now, coming into divine union, this is that release and relief. This is the communication that's finally happening, because this is the energy that was potentially holding their tongue about their anxieties and their fears, coming into divine union. That if these are energies that feel like they've successfully navigated an energetic change in commitment, moved into a deepening of an energetic commitment here, it's like only now does a lot of that energy feel ready to articulate. And that wasn't the energy that feels to a certain extent that they were holding back for the anxiety of fear of communicating with the counterpart, but it's almost that modality of the expression of not wanting to create anxiety or fear in the midst of what was occurring. And so we see even now, like a lot of that energy, it feels very cathartic, right? Because it's like you've hit calm waters. And it's like now it's like the calm waters are almost allowing an ability to have those conversations, to move into that space of like healing, because that's the difference between talking about the doubts and fears of something that's happening in the present. Being able to articulate about one's greatest fears in the past feels like that ability that we often experience because we feel like we've moved through them, right? While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is deep within the divine union frequency, this is a lot of the energy that's just like, I want to say, the best way I can describe it is like two energies that are doing like homework together, but they're also like peeking over at each other's notes. You know, like they're going like this. They're going like this every little bit of time, but it's through the observation or through the energetic connection with the other. Because what we're effectively seeing there is, again, if this is feminine, if this is masculine, that is coming into that modality where they feel like they can experience that change from within. This is almost a masculine energy being like, oh my God, I'm thinking like them. Like, it's like, and the feminine doing that also to a certain degree, right? Because that's that modality and experience that you have in energetic connection when there is that level and degree of openness that almost allows you to feel like, you know, that integration quality of within. And for energy right now, and again, is because of the softness of the Cancer season coming into the, and with the formation of the egoic self. So if these are energies that are navigating that together, it creates a little bit of an energetic blending, right? So for masculine and feminine energy, for again, a lot of the lesson of the work that the masculine is navigating right now has to do with that sense of coming into energetic compassion. Navigating with resiliency and energetic compassion, especially in the realms of the masculine being triggered. The masculine recognizes that they're not responding to the triggers in the same way. It's almost because, again, the masculine's taking that lesson from the feminine's book, which is, I don't know why they keep like, it's that reaffirmation of the statement of saying, if someone approaches you and makes you feel like a child, you don't indulge them by reacting like one, right? While for feminine energy, that same modality, building into that sense of energetic resilience, not necessarily more in the compassionate sphere, but being able to be compassionate and resilient, is almost coming into that modality of feminine feeling that ability to have to feel the need to energetically, like I want to say, lovingly, like energetically disappoint energy around them to a certain extent, because in the modality of calling back one's own energy, again, taking a page from the masculine's book, that affirmation of saying that when you move forward on one's own determined pathwork, one of the things that you have to be ready to do is disappoint the energy around you that may desire you to move in their modality. But again, that's the feminine energy that's almost building that point of observation, of alignment, because that's the difference between someone taking and feminine having to potentially navigate the oversensitivity of the energy outside of the self, because that is the energy of the feminine that is not taking another person's ability to take something personally. I know that sounds a little complicated, but again, that's almost that sense of empathy, that if someone is taking like something that you're doing on your own pathwork personally, that's the energy of the feminine saying that's an energy that's not being compassionate towards them. You know, so even here we see that this is the energy of the feminine that's maintaining compassion, but within boundaries, with a sense of resilience. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here our 8 of Cups in its reversal. And so what's really interesting about this right now is what's actually happening is this is energy that's learning to navigate within energetic situations that they previously would have walked away from. Right? Because some of that reactivity, right? That's the abandonment wound that inspires the abandonment wound, right? That's like the passing off of the abandonment wound buck. So if there are those modalities where in the past the energy would have moved into that realm of abandonment, that's that modality of recognizing that when we move into the realm of abandonment, when we want to just walk away from something, what we're really doing is like we're like handing that rod off to someone and saying, you get the abandonment wound now. You get the abandonment wound. So this is why so much of this energy right now, deep within the divine union, is learning through that nature or that energy of perseverance, right? Holding one's center, even within experiences that feel like they engender a sense of discomfort, right? Because when we are able to do that, we're able to effectively not only navigate our own abandonment wounds, but we're able to make sure that we're not effectively perpetuating them. So that's almost, again, a bit of the work that the energy within the divine union right now is doing is like the buck stops here. It's almost like that sense of the energy within the divine union saying, if you bring your abandonment wound to me, healing is also the moment that I'll just kind of recognize that that's occurring. It's not that moment that everything becomes better around you. It's a moment that your choices in the moment that things are difficult engenders what one can expect. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy right now within the divine union, not building that sense of anxiety, like learning to navigate through one's own choices, but almost again in a way that creates that sense of observation in a moment that you would have kind of just like moved in a certain direction haphazardly. That's creating that sense of, like, the minute you recognize that, you suddenly can potentially see all of the experiences wherein you may have done that in a different way, right? Now, for masculine and feminine energy, again, that's that modality where the experience of doing that may feel a little bit different, right? Because for masculine, what's interesting about this is potentially a space where masculine would have felt like their reactivity point would have allowed them to walk away from something. It would have allowed them to just kind of actively react and not think about the consequences. But here we see that a lot of the masculine deep within the divine union is kind of holding firm. You know, coming into that point of just resolution, coming into that point of like stability, that's almost allowing that space of seeing what's on the other side of the experience, had you not come into a space of reactivity. While for feminine, that modality of seeing someone energetically walk away from you and not trying to grab them and pull them back in that modality, like that is almost the feminine coming into that modality of feeling the security within oneself. Because for both of these energies, it's like they're experiencing the perspective of the counterpart energy around them. That's almost allowing them that clearance point of insight in seeing what can be expected after one addresses something in a different way. And so that moment can be very like it can feel very, very reinforcing. But at the same time, it can create a lot of energetic recall, right? And a lot of that is the contemplation energy, because it's that moment that you may see yourself in all the experiences wherein you made that choice prior in a different way. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, navigating a difficult situation together, potentially again trying to make changes to the intrinsic nature of a connection, feeling like you've successfully done so over the course of the divine union of the double Capricorn moons, is only now that moment that you it's almost like you were doing a dance and now you're done. Be like, I was so worried we were gonna mess that dance up. I was so worried. Like a little bit of that kind of energy here, because again, that's that moment that it's like you didn't allow the anxieties and fears to override the situation. And now that you've come through it together, it's like you're allowing that modality of saying like, these are things I was worried about. These were concerns that I had. While for masculine and feminine energy, in separation, a lot of that work, right? A lot of that work that we see in separation at this time has to potentially do, as it were, with that navigating again. And this is what's so difficult, I think, for a lot of the energy in separation right now. Experiencing something that feels very similar to something that happened in the past, but in such a way that you recognize that the intrinsic nature of it is different, right? So experiencing that modality or moment of something that on the face value, it looks very similar, but the intrinsic nature of it is completely different. This is what is allowing a lot of the energy right now to heal from experiences from the past with the clarity that's being experienced in the present, that's building context on what was observed, because sometimes the only way we can build a point of understanding is through energetic comparison. So for a lot of the energy right now, pointing through that point of contemplation, a lot of that same path work. And a lot of it in separation right now, it feels like a lot of trust is required. It just feels like there's a lot of trust that is needed here, specifically because I'm even seeing energies where either there's a fear right now of someone potentially walking away and someone understanding and being like, I would understand if you walk away from this. And other energies saying, no, like I'm not going to do that because I recognize the authenticity of what is occurring. Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here our Hermit card in its upright. And I like to see this. I told you, it's contemplative energy. It's contemplative energy. Guys, I got to tell you, it's not going to be a big, I know if you're worried, if you're expecting communication today might not be, I mean, if you're going to, I'm going to tell you right now, today, if you're going to get communication, it's going to be real introspective. It's going to be real introspective. It's going to be very fine-tuned is what I'm seeing. Okay. And for some of the energy in separation right now, I want to say that what I'm seeing is, again, it is the distillation. It's the ability of trying to take a lot of something and put it in a little bit of something. Because I see even now, there's some of that energy that's navigating through some circumstances right now where they're trying, and this is why I gotta say, dude, if you want to talk to someone, this is also what I'm saying today. If you need to talk to someone, if there's because there's a little bit of this energy right now in separation. I just kind of want to want to shake someone. This is the energy that's being so mindful, is being so compassionate, is being so considerate of the entire of the counterpart, that it's a little bit of this excuse me, it's a little bit of this excuse me, I don't want to disturb you kind of energy, you know what I mean? It's a little bit of that type of energy that's going through right now, and I can almost feel it. Some of the energy is no, go ahead, please disturb me, I need a distraction here. It's a little bit of that type of energy being no, please, it's fine. So I think even there we're seeing that there's a lot of consideration, there's a lot of thoughtfulness that is occurring right now in communication. But a lot of the energy in a lot of the energy right now, and I need to say this, is because a lot of the energy in separation right now is recognizing the changes without. And they're also coming into that observation of the past at the same time. It's that pre-retrograde vibe. So a lot of it may come through again with important, valuable questions, right? Being able, and what do important, and again, how do we articulate between energy that puts that level and degree of care in? That's that question. It's almost like that question being hey, I'm sorry if this is a stupid question. And someone looking with care and being there's no stupid questions. What's your question? Right? So the ability to articulate, the ability for energy to get very thoughtful and really take that to the degree and level that is required. It's almost that it feels like a decompression point, right? Because the decompression point comes in someone trying to play something off in a again, almost in a silly way. But then that it's the type of energy of something small becoming something very beautiful and introspective in the process. You know what I mean? It's that kind of energy here. It's like that. It's almost like trying to ease the density, if you will. You know what I mean? But with the level and degree of energetic care that is necessary to have. I want to say I told you there's a lot of energy right now in separation that's building into a lot of deep communication. While for the energy right now that is coming into divine union, this is the energy that's having those conversations, because it's almost the energy that's joking and being I was so worried this was going to happen, and someone being you don't have to worry about that, and that's not funny. This is almost the energy that's almost taking a playful nature in terms of something that they experienced in the past. But we can take a playful nature on something that we experienced in the past. Why can we take a playful nature on something we experienced in the past? It's because that's that moment that you kind of either want to laugh and cry, because you can, like, that's why you become playful about it, because you go, it's not happening here, is it? That's not happening anymore. I can laugh about it now. It hurts. Like, I'm laughing because it hurts, because it's the joy and the grief, right, that occurs in that moment, because you're able to say, that's not happening again. And someone's going, no, but I'm glad you told me about it. It's like, it's funny, and someone being like, it's very funny, and realizing it's not funny, because it's someone being able to talk about something in a way that becomes playful, that says, that's not where I know that that's not occurring here, right? So I told you a lot of that unpacking that may be occurring right now. Well, for masculine and feminine energy, deep within divine union right now, a lot of that work that we see that is occurring has to potentially do in that modality of experiencing spaces or places that are requiring that, like, there's a lot more of this serious energy for deep within the divine union right now, because for a lot of the energy deep within the divine union, a lot of that path work feels like that work of personal resilience, right? Because for a lot of the energy deep within the divine union, navigating these experiences wherein you feel that volatility, you feel that reactivity, but at the same time, you're able to kind of hold one's own center. For both masculine and feminine energy within the divine union, it's a little bit more of that, like, sense of energetic stoicism that's occurring, right? Because a lot of that energy is working on some deep pathwork of the self, and it's requiring that sense or that space of introspection. And we see even now that this is the energy that's moving forward in that way, like taking the relief and the lessons from one another on the way, but also going through a lot of that contemplation and introspection in the process, right? Fifth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here our 9 of Swords in its reversal. Now, for masculine and feminine energy right now, deep within the divine union, that's a lot of that work that we're effectively seeing that is occurring right now. And it's a lot of that pathwork of resilience, right? And a lot of that pathwork of resilience is experiencing modalities of not taking things energetically personally. Like, navigating through that space, inhabiting that modality, is one that is allowing for a lot of that deep energetic contemplation, if you will. Because if these are energies or modalities wherein these experiences would have created that sense of reactivity in you in the past, right? It can feel very, it's difficult. What's interesting about when you're resilient in this way is it doesn't build that sense of shutting down. It builds that sense of opening up, especially because if these energies are doing something in a way that they haven't before, they can't necessarily look back on the past to guide them, right? So a lot of this energy right now that's moving forward in that way, it feels like that sense of, like, confidence, as it were. But it's also creating that state or space of resilience, right? It's really, for masculine, again, it's experiencing that. I want to describe it. It's like the experience of, like, someone, like, like throwing an arrow at you and you just kind of pulling it out, if you will, and not letting it create that sense of volatility. For feminine, it's almost the energy, like, walking away and having to kind of hold that sense of space and feeling like you're not, like, letting someone down in the process, right? So for both of these energies right now, deep within the divine union, bearing in mind it's not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, both of these energies are having the same experience, but in the different perception of someone trying to come towards you and not reacting towards it. And feminine seeing some things move away from you and not chasing after, right? So both of these energies doing that same work. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 5 of Swords in combination with our King of Wands in its reversal. One card to clarify. Clarification coming through right now. What am I saying? Yeah, this is why the energy feels heavy today. Like, when we have to navigate through the abandonment wounds, it can feel very energetically heavy, right? Because it can feel very triggering. For masculine, a lot of that is, again, I just keep getting this, like, it's navigating through circumstances and situations of provocation, of things that feel like in the past you would have been more reactive to, right? But again, there's a little bit of this energy that we see. This is why it's like a lot of the energy deep within the divine union frequency is navigating in such a way of saying, like, the buck stops here. You know, like when you navigate forward in that way, that's how you energetically heal. It's not what's brought forward towards you, right? It's easy to take something positive and keep it positive. But what does it feel like when you have to take something negative and make it positive? Like, that is hard. That's hard work. So even here we see that a lot of the energy going through that, this is a lot of the energy going through that battle in their head, going, you know what, nobody would blame me. I could just do it. Like, nobody would blame me for doing this. Nobody would blame, you know what? And that's the energy that goes, I would blame me. I would, right? Because that's that modality, that working through the sense of self. That's the energy that's holding them, their own self, to the standard of the self. So for masculine, a lot of that is, again, feeling like there's a whole opportunity of abundance. You know, it's like one of those energies. If like someone like takes a whack at you, you'd be like, I am totally validated to take a whack back. But I'm not going to do that, right? Because that's the energy saying, if you come towards me and assume that I am a child and act and make me feel like a child, I'm not going to oblige you with the indulgence of showing you that I am one, right? And for feminine, a lot of that work of feeling that sense of being like, you know, like energy kind of, again, having to like someone taking something personally, even at a moment that you're trying to bring compassion towards it. Like, that's the feminine going through their own abandonment wound, being like, it's not personal. I like that moment that makes you come into that space of apology. And it's someone being like, you know, and you being like, I hope you recognize the way that I'm bringing forth something and the way that you're receiving it may be difficult and different, but it's not my obligation to change how you're receiving it. I'm asking you to have the resilience to recognize what I'm bringing forth, right? So that ability of the feminine to almost recognize and bring that same sense of compassion towards those around them. That's almost the energy that's building, again, compassion, but within resilient boundaries. Masculine and feminine energy right now coming into divine union. This is the articulation of anxieties and fears now that you've overcome the fear. Like, this is the energy that almost recognizes and says, I can talk to you about my anxieties and concerns because we're through them, right? So we see even now that a lot of that energy navigating through that, even in that modality of speaking towards what you were like, what those anxieties were, that's that moment that feels like that demarcation of relief, because this is energy that feels like in the moment of doing that, that's the process of letting go. That's the process of moving into what feels like that honest commitment, because that's the energy that is either talking about the past that created those doubts and fears, or that is the energy that is, you know, feeling that sense of catharsis in expressing those feelings of discomfort towards the counterpart, and then knowing in that moment of expressing them, the energy saying, you never have to worry about that from me, right? While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation, a lot of this work right now in separation, it's hard. I can see this because it feels like a lot of this energy right now is being built upon, it's requiring a lot of trust very early, right? And what I can see even now, and this is why I see a lot of this energy, like almost trying to push forward communication right now would be key, because this is a lot of the energy that's trying to force themselves to communicate, even in a modality of not wanting to take up too much energetic space, because these are energies that almost don't necessarily know where they fit in each other's lives, but also feel that vitality of the connection that they're creating. So we see even now that there may be a lot of again, the energy that's communicating this way it's almost like that energy that like apologizes when they reach out, and someone being like, you have nothing to apologize for. And then like having that modality of feeling like the release and relief and being able to articulate and express one's own doubts and one's fears to one another. That like allows for that sense of energetic or emotional catharsis. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our King of Wands in its reversal in combination with our Eight of Cups in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Death card. So a lot of transformation energy that we see is being navigated right now. The transformation energy, it can feel very heavy, right? The transformation energy, there's a lot of changes, right? And the changes that we see articulated in the Death card, they're always big changes. They're not like small adjustments. There's like lots of big changes. So you can imagine that for a lot of the energy right now, like a lot of the energy in separation, navigating big changes in the midst of trying to forge new energetic connections, it can feel overwhelming, right? It can feel energetically overwhelming because it's just that feeling of all of that being in the air. And so for a lot of the energy right now, we see even now in separation, it's requiring a little bit more perseverance, I'd say, than usual, especially because I want to say even now, and it's more closely, again, this has more to do with all of those reversed cards we saw in the masculine energetic field last week that are still kind of coming through here a bit. A lot of that energy of a lot of the work that the masculine energy is doing right now is navigating the feeling of change, but not feeling like there's a part of the self that feels like it's in control of that change, right? It's a little bit of that letting go process. And it's a little bit easier for feminine to navigate that space, right? For masculine, what's actually happening is feeling so much of that change energy, it creates some kind of need or desire to want to have some kind of sense of control over it. And so for a lot of the masculine energy right now, in that modality, this could be where a lot of the communication is happening. Like the masculine just having an ability to articulate on their own doubts, on their own fears. Like that's where I see that a lot of the energy right now, the masculine in separation, is feeling kind of that release and relief and connecting to feminine. Because for a lot of the feminine energy right now, this is feminine energy that's actively going through the process of some of that transformation. And a lot of that is, again, karmically healing from past experiences. Via V, and again, I need to say this, the difference between masculine energy that is coming towards them with the path of determination, with like a lot of that vitality, with a lot of that concentration and determination that immediately builds upon that clarification of feminine, of what it felt like in the past, wherein feminine may have felt like they were trying to do everything to ease the path of masculine coming towards them. But the masculine was always trying to put an obstacle in the way that was preventing that energetic connection. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, this is a lot more of that energetic unpacking. Because a lot of this energy right now, this could even be the feminine. Like feminine understands more about the transitional nature of moving deeper into connection. So even here, for a lot of the feminine masculine energy, if this is masculine energy that's moving forward to feminine in this way, it feels like a letting go process. This could be a lot of the masculine energy saying, I'm letting go of that childish self. I'm letting go of the self that energetically prioritized the world around them instead of the world that I was creating. So for a lot of the energy of masculine in this modality, like that's that feeling of like putting away childish things, if you will, because this is the energy of the masculine that's moving deeper into the connection with the feminine and saying, I'm moving deeper into the connection with you. And I don't feel like you're bringing that forward in me. I don't feel like you're demanding of that to me. It's because this is precious. Because I feel like I'm carrying something precious with me. and I'm doing and this is almost masking me, like I feel that change within. I feel it within. This has become my energetic priority. So again, these are energies that almost, again, that feeling of what's occurring between them. It's not that they're trying to change the energy into something. It's that it feels like it's out of their control. It feels like something that is inevitable because they're doing their best to energetically preserve it. While for masculine and energy and feminine energy, deep within divine union, this is the energy that feels, I mean, this is where some of the intensity is, right? I mean, like there's intensity across all of the frequencies, but a lot of the reason that so much of this intensity right now may feel very difficult for the energy deep within the divine union is because it's path work related to your own feeling of reactivity. And that can feel like that kind of energy that kind of work can feel very hard because it feels very close to the bone. You know what I mean? It's requiring a lot of that work within the self. You know, it may even feel like you can't really like externalize a lot of it. You're just kind of observing it within the self. But we see even now, like that's because the energy is recognizing the changes that have occurred via simply being in the divine union frequency. Like being in that to such a degree that, again, you can recognize not only the changes that you've experienced, but also seeing, like, being able to recognize the change of yourself from where you are now to who you used to be, right? Continuing to get clarification between our 8 of, and a lot of it has to do so much with the energy around you moving in a way that feels like it's trying to change you. And then saying, like, no, like, no. Clarification between our 8 of Cups in its reversal in combination with our Hermit card in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our 3 of Wands in its upright. So a lot of this energy, it feels like, I'm just telling you, the energy today, it's contemplative, it's still, it's present. It navigates that space of just kind of holding space and observing. And a lot of it, I mean, I think there's like, it's a little, gotta say, like there's a little bit of this like bittersweet energy right now for energy deep within the divine union frequency, because a lot of that energy, that ability of recognizing and feeling that amplification process, it looks more like a matter of it's like it's having a different perspective. So for a lot of the energy that's going through that path work, looking not only towards where you are now, but also like, those moments or modalities in the past wherein you feel like, and this is why it's heavy here, because some of this is almost energetically looking towards the self and recognizing and holding space for what may have felt like it was like self-limiting modalities from the past, right? So for a lot of that energy, navigating in that way, that is that ability to articulate upon it, that ability to navigate through it. Because I told you, for a lot of the masculine energy right now, deep within the divine union, almost that energy like trying to come towards you with the inner child and saying like, I know that is the inner child that is you. And the masculine almost having to come forward and say, that's not me. And I'm going to show you that's not me because I'm not going to come into the reactivity of a child in the process. For a lot of the masculine energy navigating that work right now, it's requiring a lot of that contemplation, right? It's requiring a lot of that introspection. While for the feminine energy and acknowledgement of the self in the process of making and committing to those energetic changes in the present. While for masculine and for feminine energy, this is more about that modality of resilience. This is more about that energy that's looking towards the past version of self and saying that desire to please, that desire to become everything for everyone, that's sometimes how we feel like we stray off of our own path work. Because when we become everything for everyone, we sometimes can lose sense of our own self along the way. So we see even now that for a lot of the feminine energy coming into that pathwork of resilience, again, taking those energetic notes from one another, these are the energies that feel like, again, they're coming into that sense of deepening of an alignment, but it's requiring that ability of looking at, taking a hard look at the same time upon the past, either in a contemplative, introspective way, or in such a way that one is able to acknowledge and embrace that pathwork, right? And I told you that's the difference. I mentioned right now that that's the difference between going through that experience and feeling like you're trying to give like the emotional and the egoic self are giving each other like an awkward hug, or it can feel like a wrestling match. It can feel like the two energies are like, vying for dominance. Well, for a lot of the energy right now coming into divine union, a lot of this work that we're seeing that is occurring right now has to do in the realms and modalities of being able to experience and fully articulate on something that you just went through. Because for a lot of the energy, I told you, we saw a little bit of that. Literally, we saw like the representation of like calm waters, if you will, that have entered in some way, shape, or form. So for that energy, feeling like you were able to hold on to the intrinsic nature of something, even as you move through it, and it's still there. You're like, we still got it. I still got it. That's the energy that is kind of going through that process and is having that unpacking. They're like going through that. It's like the conversation you have after, like, after you go through something, to be like, let's recap what just occurred, because that's that moment that finally feels like you can articulate upon all of the anxieties, because these energies are finally in alignment on the other side. It's not that everything's perfect, but there is that feeling of stability that's coming in. It's good. Like the best energy to be in right now is the energy coming into divine union, because it's the only energy right now that's like embracing a little bit of this calm water energy. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this is that moment of distance. But the anxiety of the distance is, it feels like the anxiety of distance that's also like, it's like you got to kind of keep your own lanterns lit. It feels a little bit like you got to kind of like mind the lighthouse. You're holding that space right now, and you're looking towards the potential counterpart, and you're trying to find a way to communicate. And especially if someone's going, like, if someone is needing or requiring energetic space right now, particularly some of the masculine energy, that's the feminine energy that's almost, again, kind of moving forward to them in such a way. And like, I almost feel like the articulation that someone's trying to give in this modality is saying to someone, if I'm not communicating a lot, it's not because I don't desire to. It's because I don't want to overstep. It's because I don't want to over prioritize my position in what you are experiencing. I don't want to make it personal. I don't want to make it about me. So we see even now that's like the only difficulty is for a lot of the energy in separation right now, there's a little bit of that quietude, and neither of the energies want that quietude. So if you want to communicate more right now, if you're in separation, you have to kind of lead forth and say, if I'm not communicating a lot right now, it's because I'm trying to be energetically polite. You might have to say that to someone. There's like a little bit of this, like, am I talking too much energy for the energy in separation right now that needs to be like, it feels like it's like someone needs a joke. You know what I mean? Like someone needs to cut the mood, if you will. Continuing to get clarification between our Hermit card in its upright and our Nine of Wands in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. All right, what do we got here? It's because it's heavy. You know what it is? I see it right now. So that's what's happening. I got to stress this. This is what's so difficult when we encounter someone in the midst of experiencing something heavy, because someone doesn't want to overstep, right? That's that modality of saying, like, I only want to unpack something if you want to unpack. I don't want to overstep into your privacy. I don't want to overstep or accidentally give something. This is the energy that's trying to feel the mood of the room, if you will, to try to figure out what to bring forth right now. So I got to say this, if you're in separation right now and you're trying to communicate and you feel like you're trying to cut that energetic heaviness, or if there's something that's occurring in one or the other's experiences right now that feels like it's hard because even communicating feels like it's bringing too much levity to something that feels like they're navigating that's energetically heavy, the best thing that you can say in that modality is, what do you need right now? Like, how can I, what feels like it is right for you in this moment? So I see like almost a lot of the energy in separation, trying to suss out and feel out what feels like it's the appropriate, like what feels like it's appropriate, as it were. Because we see even now, it's like almost trying to cut that density. You know, that's that moment that like sometimes, again, a good partnership, a good relationship will never suffer under a question. It'll always flourish under it, right? So for some of the energy right now, and I see even now, some of these energies are like letting go of experiences wherein they felt that weight, that questions did not lead to flourishing. They may have led to volatility, right? While for some of this energy right now, moving through in that path work, you know, having that density, but almost trying to like, I can almost see like some of the energy right now navigating through and saying like, I just want to let you know, I'm not going to assume, I'm not going to take your hand if you're here, but I just want you to know that I am here. So we see even now like a little bit of that energy. It's like, it's helping, right? That's the energy that says, no, please, you're not overstepping. Like, I'm glad for, like, is the energy being like, I'm glad for the distraction is what I'm seeing even now. So I just keep seeing that there's a lot of these new energetic connections, heavy conversations, deep unpacking that's happening very early in the energetic connections. Masculine, and in that modality, again, a lot of that, what's hard, like a lot of that process of letting go, because there's almost that joyfulness that's being created in the conversations, in the introspection. What happens again when we experience connections where our questions lead to joyous outcomes? That allows us to shed those experiences in the past where it felt like energetic questions cause volatility, cause separation, right? While for masculine and feminine energy, that is coming, and even here there's so much consideration that's being brought forth. That's not, these are almost like, this is almost like the energy that's feeling the weight of the intensity of a connection. And there's almost like maybe even some uncertainty on what to do with it in separation right now, because this is a lot of the energy I feel even now. This is the energy that's like almost looking towards another and saying like, do you feel this too? Like, is this just me? Masculine and feminine energy that is coming into separation right now. A lot of that work that we're seeing and feeling is that modality of being able to come into an honest energetic expression in relationality to seeing and experiencing these modalities wherein, again, you've come through something difficult. You are able to hold on to something intrinsically, carry it forward with you. So we see even now that for a lot of that energy, doing that work, bringing something forward in such a way, now having felt that relief or that release, feminine, seeing masculine, being able to hold forward on their own energetic commitments. This is that energy that feels like, again, that certainty, but also that uncertainty, because a lot of this energy doesn't know what comes forward after this. Like a lot of the energy, like we did that, we don't know what happens beyond that point. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is deep within divine union, this is a lot of that energy right now that is, again, feeling that same sense of uncertainty, especially if there's qualities and characteristics of the self that you're bringing forth that you haven't brought forth within the self before. That requires a lot of that internal energetic contemplation point, because that's that modality that you experience and recognize that you may say, like, I don't know what to expect because I haven't found this quality and characteristic prior to this point. So we see even now, like, that's leading to a lot of that energetic contemplation from within. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Five of Pentacles in its reversal in combination with our Death card in its upright. One card to clarify, please. clarification coming through right now with our high priestess in its reversal. So more of this energy that we're seeing right now that is requiring, and this is here. So you see even now how these energies, they're in alignment, even in this modality. So for feminine, again, masculine energy, not trying to come into the modality of provocation, right? This is a lot of that energy right now that we're seeing, that the masculine energy, if there's that modality of navigating those, having that openness, having that adaptability, that's almost the masculine energy that's like, you know, bringing forward more compassion in their own energetic experience at this time, that is leading to that feeling of processing forward, because this is the energy right now that feels like and recognizes the changes within the self that are occurring simply from being in energetic connection with the feminine. While for feminine energy right now, that same modality to a certain extent, this is the feminine energy that's recognizing their own quality or characteristic or observational point of doubting their own self, doubting what they know is right for them, potentially because of looking outside of the self too frequently. So we see even now that both of these energies within divine union going through that process of transformation, experiencing a lot of that work. But a lot of it is like, it's like looking through this process of like checking the ego at the door, even as you navigate forward in that way. That's heavy stuff, right? Because this is the energy that's like, they're coming into Leo season. You're coming into Leo season and you're checking your ego at the door. That's going to lead to a lot of energetic compassion. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, a lot of that work that we're seeing that is occurring right now is navigating those experiences that may have occurred in the past wherein you doubted your own self, right? And a lot of it is the energy coming into divine union and being open and articulating upon those abandonment wounds. Even potentially articulating to one another those moments that they allowed their abandonment wounds to guide them in ways that they weren't necessarily recognizing were themselves. You know, for masculine, and again, a lot of this work right now coming into divine union is again, recognizing those spaces of regret. When we navigate a space of regret, the best we can do is come into a space of accountability and acknowledgement, but also the ability to identify and recognize allows us to move forward in better ways. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy, if this is masculine coming towards feminine, and seeing feminine in those modalities where feminine felt like they were too adaptable, that they didn't trust their own self, and those experiences wherein the feminine may have looked too much outside of themselves for that point of energetic direction. Like both of these energies right now doing that unpacking, but also feeling the value, like the value gift of the counterpart, in almost saying, I feel safe to have those expressions towards you, because I know that I don't have to inhabit those qualities of characteristics that I know are not a part of me. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy coming into divine union, it's that feeling of acting as one another's safety net, if you will. And I need to stress this. This isn't, I'm meaning here the safety net of feeling like you need to lean on someone to be able to find yourself. It feels like that modality of being able to be in a space or place where you can be your authentic self, that almost recognizes that that's the energy that like releases the expectation of who you are simply for being in connection with the intrinsic nature of who you are, if that makes sense. Like the embodiment of who you are being whole enough that it doesn't require you to kind of follow a particular template. Continuing for the energy right now in separation. A lot of this energy in separation right now, you know, the problem that I'm seeing with the energy in separation is you guys are in the same modality right now. And there's too much of this energy that's being too energetically mindful of not wanting to step on one another's toes. This is too much of this energy of not wanting to step on one another's toes. So that's, I'm going to say it again. If you're in separation and you're not sure what to say to someone, say to them, I don't know what to say. If you're in separation and you're not sure what's going on, you say, can I ask a question? Don't assume Don't come into the realm of assumption. Come into that modality of allowing oneself that path work, because what we see even now is there's so much discretion here. These are energies that feel the viability of that connection, but they're trying not to presume. They don't want to presume where they are in one another's lives. So it's a very fine line that a lot of the energy in separation feels like they need to walk right now, because they're not trying to assume, right? The past is repeating itself, while they're also not trying to presume where they inhabit in the experience of another. So you can see even now that these energies are like they're just like, so there might be not a lot of communication because everyone's being so polite. So it might kind of require that sense of just bringing a little bit of easement. But again, allow those questions to be asked to build upon that point of understanding, continuing to get clarification between Death card in its upright and our Three of Wands in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with Queen of Pentacles in its upright. So again, a lot of this work of the energy in separation right now. A lot of this energy of I have to say, there's a little bit of this energy of the feminine in separation right now. It's just, it's very grounded. And it's grounded, and I think in a way that and I have to stress this. And this is the only thing, this gives me a little bit of, this is a little, because this is the feminine energy in separation that's, working, is feminine energy in separation. Be mindful not to throw yourself into the practical so much that you're not navigating your own emotional space. Because I do see that there's a little bit of a tendency for that there with the combination of these cards, right? But again, I also think that a lot of this right now is potentially positive for energy and separation, because in a way, a lot of this that I'm seeing here is this is the energy of the feminine that starts to feel those doubts and the fears rise up, starts to feel that uncertainty, and feminine just grounds it in this is the feminine almost grabbing themselves in separation going, hey, focus on what is practical, focus on the tangibility, focus on what you see. Don't let that voice of self-doubt, that voice of anxiety, that voice of fear start to create something that is not there, right? Because I told you a lot of the work right now of the feminine in separation is navigating between the nuanced difference between an assumption and intuition. Assumption wants to presume the past is repeating itself. Intuition asks us to look more closely at similar things, right? I'm going to say it again. Assumption asks us to assume the past is repeating itself. Intuition guides us to look more closely at similar things. So for a lot of the feminine energy right now, if that's that modality where I can almost see that in separation, there's what if all those little what if this is happening? And it's the feminine's going, be quiet. This is the feminine energy almost building into that same sense of resilience within their own self, because this is the feminine that's staying very grounded even in the face of those niggling doubts, of those small fears, of those parts of the self that start to say, what if this is not what it this is the feminine going, it is. Stay firm, stay focused, keep one's own center. And so again, for a lot of the masculine energy navigating through this right now, we see even now that there's a lot of the masculine energy having those experiences of, again, potentially, if these were modalities where masculine may have felt like there was feminine in the past that was being quiet or silent, because this is masculine going, what if they're upset at me? What if they're mad? What if they're doing, this is the masculine going, or what if they're busy? What if they're working? What if they're this is the masculine going through the same exact process towards feminine, which is why I'm going to say it again. I don't want any of you assuming the worst right now. I want all of you asking the right questions and working in a space or place of being very practical and pragmatic with how you navigate those circumstances and situations. Because even now, we feel like we're seeing here, we're in that pre-retrograde period. It's far too easy to allow for a point of distance, a communication error, a misunderstanding. Someone, I even see someone here being like, I thought you said that you needed some space. I thought you said that you needed some time. Coming into that space of clarification, because I can see even now some of that taking root here and energy kind of moving in the modality that they think is what another desires, and someone having to build into a point of clarification. Just don't. Okay? While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of that work that we're seeing right now is effectively part and parcel, if you will, for being able to feel like that ability to, and I need to stress this right now. This is energy. And even here, if I need to stress this, if there's like a doubt or the fear that's being articulated here, what we're effectively seeing even now is a lot of that energy coming into that modality of almost being able to say something in such a way that I even want to say it right now, because there's still some of this modality here. Working through those processes or those experiences wherein the feminine, I even see this, like the feminine in that modality of having that uncertainty, it's requiring a lot of closure of those past experiences, because a lot of the feminine energy in that modality is even here coming into divine union, and they're surrendering that modality of uncertainty. Like a lot of that feminine energy is just coming into that space or place where they're recognizing that some of the experiences from the past, you know, it's not that it's the fact that the feminine inhabited a space where they allowed that uncertainty to perpetuate, right? And so for a lot of the energy of the feminine coming into divine union, that's the feminine energy feeling the release of the relief of setting one's own energetic standards. That almost requires that point of looking back at the past self and saying, you were trying to bake bread in a washing machine, in a laundromat. I was trying to bake bread in a laundromat. I was trying to wash clothes in a bakery, right? Because that's the feminine energy that's feeling the valuability point of seeing and recognizing the difference between the masculine that has an ability to articulate upon what they desire versus seeing a masculine that not only can articulate upon it, but they immediately act upon it, right? And for masculine, that same modality is potentially taking form in terms of seeing towards feminine, who again, it's not that uncertainty isn't there, right? It's not like all that sense of like what potentially could be exists, but the feminine that dwells very much into the practicality of maintaining that point of balance within themselves. This even here is almost like I see the counterparts coming into like divine union, looking at one another and saying, it's not that you're energetically perfect, but I see that you do everything that you can along the way to try to build that sense of balance within yourself. This is how these energies are moving into alignment, because it doesn't require perfection. It requires the ability to see one another and recognize that same sense of self that keeps one intrinsically intact. So we see even now that for a lot of that energy, that is the energy that like what they're creating between one another, it feels like it's precious, because it feels like it's the combination of their own energies together that make something that is even more beautiful than even it, like it's like the two unhealed parts that make a healed whole. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, deep within the divine union, this is like a lot of this pathwork of resilience, and it can feel very frustrating, because for a lot of the energy right now, deep within the divine union frequency, feeling a lot of that energetic change around you, but experiencing the fact that your own ability to navigate through it doesn't create a change within you. That's what we're effectively seeing that's occurring for a lot of the energy deep within the divine union right now. And that's hard stuff. It requires a bit of resiliency. For masculine, it feels more like it feels more like an energetic softening, and even masculine going, like looking at themselves going, am I going soft? Am I going soft? And masculine being like, no, I'm not going soft. I'm becoming like, this is the masculine. It's almost again saying, I'm just not in the modality. I'm checking my own ego at the door, right? Because this is the masculine. It's finding a new sense of strength. While for feminine, this is that moment of feminine going, am I becoming too hard? Am I becoming too resilient? And this is the feminine going, I'm not becoming too resilient. I was too adaptable in the past, right? So we see even now these energies that are going through that internal contemplation point within the self, like facing their own anxieties and fears, even as they recognize the changes that are occurring within them, right? Change is positive so much as one recognizes, understands, and identifies it. It's inevitable, but it's also valuable. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Three of Wands in combination with our Moon card. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Nine of Cups in its reversal. So a lot of this here, like I told you, it's a lot of that energetic unpacking. It's a lot of that energetic unpacking. And a lot of it, I need to stress this, like it's that feeling. It's like I see a lot of the energy within the divine union. Like it's like you're pushing your chips in, but you're pushing your chips in towards yourself. You know, like that's what's really beautiful about this. And I think in a way what's interesting about it is that journey, but for masculine and feminine right now, it's the same thing. But here's the difference about it. For the masculine energy, it's the feeling of taking your chips and pulling them off the table. Especially if this is masculine that is feeling that change in the need to feel like they has to prove themselves outside to outside energy, healing some of that inner child. What's hard about that is if that's like that energetic feeling of masculine, like pulling their chips in towards them and feeling like the anxiety or the abandonment wound of doing so, like then immediately feeling the rush of security in doing so, right? Like that's the energy of the masculine, building a sense of self-confidence in relationality to knowing who they are that doesn't require that sense of getting that sense of approval from without. For feminine, that same modality of feeling that and feeling the disappointment of those around you as you do so, and feeling that sense that you're letting others down, but almost saying to yourself, that's not my burden to carry. That's not my burden to meet other people's expectations, right? So one is navigating those feelings of volatility, right? One's feeling that feeling of feeling like provoked, and the other is feeling the energy of navigating through the feeling of disappointment. But we see that both of these energies right now within divine union, navigating through that work, is that sense of building the resilience within the self that is being articulated and strengthened by observation of the connection to the counterpart, that builds that sense of resilience within yourself in the process. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming into divine union, a lot of this work that we see right now is that feeling. It's the opposite. It's feeling like you're pushing all of your chips in. You're pushing all of your chips in, because that's that modality of saying, like, these are now our chips. Like, these are now our chips. These are the chips that we share together. And there's a little bit of that beautiful expression of like, come what may here, because that's the energy of like what that connection feels like. It's almost like this energy is integrating to such an extent now that there's not even my chips or your chips. This is the energy that almost says, these are our chips now, right? While for masculine and feminine energy, in separation, a lot of this work that we're seeing that is happening right now is not wanting to, like, it's like you're worried that your chip might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Like, this is the energy that's trying to be very mindful about wanting to give someone, like wanting to be able to communicate with someone, but not wanting to be able to overburden someone in the process. So we see even now that there's like that overabundance of courtesy that's required here, and both energies are feeling it. And it can feel very frustrating, because it can almost feel very confusing, because it's like not a lot is being said in separation, but there's a lot behind it. Continuing to get clarification between High Priestess in its reversal and our Queen of Pentacles in its upright. May I have one card, please? Clarification coming through right now with our Magician card. If this card looks like it's familiar, it's because it was the bottom of the deck yesterday. So, and that's the thing. For a lot of the energy right now, of feminine in separation, working through that path work is requiring that ability to ask those energetic questions. Because even here, I have to say, if this is energy that is in separation, there's a little bit of the feminine navigating that sense of trust in relationality to, I have to say, and this is accurate. If these are energies that you're building into a new energetic connection and it's requiring some kind of trust, like feeling of trust to be built, it's almost natural and expected for the feminine to feel that anxiety and fear as to like whether this is the modality of something that is immediately happening, or if this is something that one feels is going to be kind of like the whole of an experience. So we see even now, this is a lot of the feminine energy that is doing a lot of work in terms of discerning the motivations and the manifestation goals of masculine, right? A lot of that work in the space or place of introspection, because we see even now that that is how the feminine energy is navigating from experiences wherein they feel like them and the masculine energy didn't share the same manifestation goals. So what do we see that the feminine is doing at this time? The feminine energy is being very practical in articulating upon their own manifestation goals to be able to understand and recognize what they can tangibly expect from masculine energy that's approaching them at this time. While for masculine energy right now, a lot of that same path work is required, because if this is, again, navigating forward right now from a place or space of feminine that you see even now has that modality of uncertainty potentially rising up, because again, if these are circumstances that are less than ideal, and this is the modality where the feminine is like working through that sense of practicality, we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy, that ability to be able to articulate and build forth towards feminine is almost requiring that leap of faith in terms of articulating what your aspirations and desires are. And even here, we feel like we can see that for a lot of the masculine energy, you know, that can be anxiety inducing. That can be a little bit that's almost like, again, it's requiring that certainty of the self right now. So a lot of this, I want to say there's a lot of practical, important conversations that are occurring right now between the aspirations of feminine energy and separation versus the aspirations of masculine. And the weighing on the degree of practicality towards those aspirations, we see even now, like there's a little bit, like again, there's a little bit of that space or place for those hard conversations to be had, as it were. But again, for the energy right now moving deeper into divine union, that is that modality of the feminine holding the energetic standard between, again, hearing what it is that the masculine desires, but almost, again, also awaiting to see what can be done about that in relationality to tangible action. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, a lot of this work of coming into divine union right now, that's that feeling of like, I mean, this is the energy of the counterparts, if you will. And even here, if these are modalities or experiences that you're navigating, that like some of this, I see even now, like some of this energy of navigating rocky waters had to potentially do with navigating the interpersonal relationships that potentially got turbulent at a time that you were coming into divine union. A lot of this energy that is navigating forward in that way, this is a lot of that articulation point, speaking towards like what those new plans are, what those manifestation goals are, while also, again, recognizing the experiences and the changes within, like experience, like you're finding within one another in the process, but if almost feeling that from a state of vibrancy or excitement as you go forward. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, deep within divine union, a lot of this work right now, it's building into the realms of confidence. It's building into the realms of security. And for feminine, it feels like a lot of groundedness. It feels like a lot of that feminine energy becoming grounded. While for masculine energy in this modality right now, this is a lot of the masculine energy feeling self-empowered, right? Because for a masculine energy to feel like they're in control of their own self, they're not in a space of reactivity. That's almost a masculine energy that feels like that Leo, like that's a Leo season coming through and feeling the pride in themselves because they're not looking outside of themselves for validation. They're feeling that sense of pride from within. Continuing to get clarification between our Queen of Pentacles in combination with our Nine of Cups in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Fool card. So for masculine and feminine energy right now, deep within divine union, that's that moment of recognizing and feeling that strength in terms of who you are, that then leaves that expectation as to where you go forward with that. Because for a lot of the energy, I even said, that ability of coming into a space of vulnerability, navigating through that vulnerability and recognizing the changes within the self, potentially even seeing how you respond and react to situations that feels different than how you may have experienced or reacted previously. A lot of this energy now feels that excitement and possibility and relationality to what that leads going forward. Because a lot of that energy feels like that's that modality where you recognize the changes in the self that feel familiar. It's like you've kind of thrown the map away because you don't necessarily know what to expect beyond that point. So we see even now that for a lot of that energy, that's kind of that modality of experiencing and sharing that feeling of like excitement in relationality to feeling, to allowing oneself to open and experience the possibilities going forward from a sense of excitement. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, this is that modality that, again, it almost feels like you're leaving the past behind, as it were, because for a lot of this energy, I told you, so much of this karmic clearing that is occurring even in the process of you moving deeper into an energetic commitment. That's almost that moment that feels, I mean, it's okay if it feels bittersweet, right? Because this is the energy that feels like and recognizes that what, like, the shape of what they feel for one another is such that it's almost got its own momentum. It's got its own momentum. It's like you're almost like chasing after it, because to a certain extent, with like what you feel between one another, it's not that you're trying to change the energy. You're inhabiting it. You're moving around it. You're doing what you can to energetically support it. And even there we see that there's that moment of like that vitality in kind of feeling the excitement as it relates to the possibilities ahead, even if it feels like you're not necessarily sure what continues on the way. While for masculine and feminine energy and separation right now, this is a lot of path work and clarification. I feel like there's a little bit of this energy in separation right now that feels like they're at a little bit of an energetic impasse, particularly if there's circumstances that are creating like an energetic obstacle at the time of a new energetic connection forming. This is a lot of the work that we're seeing here that is basically almost requiring some sense of clarification, because we see even now, if this is masculine in separation, articulating their desire to feminine, but at the same time articulating their feeling of not being able to act upon it, this is the feminine energy almost moving into that modality of saying to themselves, like maintaining the energetic standards. It says words are nice, but words must be met with action. So we see even now that there's a lot of that planning that may be occurring right now in relationality to articulating about what are the obstacles that are potentially standing between new energetic connections to allow for that easement of coming into energetic connection. And even here, I feel like what we're seeing is, again, that ability of articulating through, asking the question at a moment that you're potentially feeling that sense or that anxiety to pull away, not coming into that pathwork of assumption. I feel like even now, it almost feels like that mutual sense of relief and release, because these are the energies saying, I was waiting for you to say that. You know, like I was hoping you would say that. Like somebody's like, it's almost like it's giving a little bit of that like go first energy, right? Because the energy is so anxious about stepping on toes that they're almost waiting in anticipation for the other one to take the step forward. But once someone does it, it's like, brrr, like that's like what the kind of energy that we're seeing here today. Final card for today's spread is Chariot in its reversal. So for a lot of the energy right now, the practical obstacles are such that like there's a lot of concentration around them. This is why I see even now some of the new energetic connections that are forming. It's the energy that's moving with like care for one another. If there are practical obstacles that are being navigated, like that's that modality of not wanting to take not wanting to take like that not wanting to like not taking it energetically personally. So that's why we see here, I'll put it this way, okay? If you're someone going through a tangible obstacle, you may be the one that needs to advance communication today, because I see even now like that's the energy that doesn't feel like they want to overwhelm someone that's going through a difficulty point, right? And I feel like once you do, it's like, everything can kind of like open up. If this is energy right now that is utilizing that pathwork of not wanting to step on toes, then a good way of moving forward is going towards someone with that sense and saying, are you okay? Is there anything you need? What's going on? Like utilizing that state of asking the valuable question to try to get that point of clarity. That's almost built upon that path of saying, I'd love to communicate with you, but I don't want you to feel obligated to do so, kind of thing. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now, a lot of this energy is just feeling the relief and release of being able to articulate on all the anxiety points that they may have felt in the transition of changing an energetic connection without wanting to actually change the intrinsic nature of the connection. So for a lot of the energy in this modality right now, being able to navigate forward from that, this is a lot of the energy focusing on the practicals, focusing on the practical hurdles today. Maybe even putting those like towards one another because now it's that moment that it's like, I almost see a lot of energy that's recognizing today's the day that they don't talk about their problems, or they're talking about our problems, like the problems that become both of the energetic problems to a certain extent. But again, why? Because these are the energies that look towards the other, not for a solution, but for practical articulation on a better way to solve something. So we see even now that that's what's happening. A lot of this energy is already moved into the divine union, deeper into the divine union, such that this is what the energy is doing in the divine union, almost intuitively. Bottom of the deck, 2 of Swords in its upright. The thing about some of this energy right now is it's requiring like a level or degree of patience. It's requiring that modality of not becoming reactive. It doesn't mean that there isn't I said this yesterday. If you're feeling motivated right now, if there's something about the energy right now that's motivating you forward and something that you've given a lot of thought and consideration to, then this is good energy for that. Because that's the energy that lets you recognize that the energy is such that it's like almost like pushing you forward in a way, but it's pushing you forward. It's giving you like that Leo encouragement to like move, like we discussed, in that direction that you already knew you were going. You just needed a little shove, right? But what we want to avoid that could be negative right now is anything that moves you off of your own path because it pokes at your ego. Recognize the difference between that. Right? So something that like nudges at your ego in such a way that it builds confidence to do something that you knew that you were intending to do. That would be positive to use with this energy right now. What would be a no-no area is, again, having that feeling of someone provoking your ego and then just reacting in kind because you felt like your ego was poked. Because we're coming into, like, this is the Leo season coming in with still some of that Cancerian energy with a combination of the retrograde. So again, let that egoic self guide you in the direction that you feel called towards, not push you off of your path because you feel you need to react or respond to something. That is our daily collective for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here to receive it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. Please keep in mind when you book a private reading, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Also please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. So I encourage you to do it there. Also, a couple of updates before we close for today and start our personal readings. First and foremost, welcome. Thank you to everyone who participated in our Empress class last week. It was such a delight to be able to go through that card with you. Our next tarot class in the series will be held on August 14th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. And all you need to do if you'd like to become a part of that class program is head over to my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Your paid subscription to my Substack will grant you entry into our live classes. It will also grant you access to all of the recordings and course materials for our previous classes. So you have ample opportunity to catch up if you're just joining us. You'll also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions that you may have in relation to anything that we're learning. And if you become a founding member to my Substack, not only will you receive a discount on the full year's worth of classes, but you will also receive a complimentary mentorship reading with me, wherein I will assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey and give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize the classes and your own pathwork to the best of your advantage going forward. Even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my Substack, I would encourage you to follow me there to be able to stay up to date with any new offerings, events. I also post my newsletter there each week, which will give you my full live schedule. You'll also get up-to-date information on any new giveaways. Speaking of giveaways, I've announced the winner for our June Tarot giveaway over on my Substack. Congratulations to our winner. We are now doing our July giveaway, and if you would like to become entered to win a free tarot reading, just head over to the link tree in my bio. There's a 2-minute travel survey there. Filling out that travel survey will grant you an entry into that contest. But if you'd like to increase your chances of winning, go ahead and forward it to a friend, because when I pull the winner, I'll be giving away a free reading not only to the person who wins, but also to whoever referred them. So thank you if you've already entered, and I wish you the best of luck in winning. Finally, I want to let you guys know about a few new offerings I am now offering on top of my standard life path readings. I'm now offering mentorship classes. These can be purchased on an individual level. Or if you would like to purchase a full package, a month worth of classes, that's 4 45-minute classes, 1 per week over the course of a month. You can do so there. Those classes focus on whatever area of study you are most invested in learning in. I take a very limited amount of students for that reason. Also, for my clients seeking more consistent weekly tarot support, I'm very happy to be offering weekly tarot insight packages. That is a package of 4 30-minute readings, 1 per week over the course of a month, so that you can stay more consistent and up to date on what is occurring in your own journey. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing in these messages. And we will do this again tomorrow.